Hey, in this video, I'm going to address how a single or unmarried person protects their assets in case they go into a nursing home and make themselves eligible for long-term care Medicaid. Okay, so I know that's a mouthful. I'm going to break it down. I'm Paul Rabalais. I'm an estate planning attorney. I help our law firm's clients get and keep their legal affairs in order. And I'm putting together a 6-part series here because I can dig a little deeper in the various 6 parts. Part 1, which I'm doing right now, is really the big picture on this issue of a single or unmarried person who has some assets and they fear that if they go into a nursing home, they're going to lose their life savings and they're going to lose their home. And what are their options for protecting what they have for themselves and for their families? So this first video is the big picture of that. The second video, or the second part, is going to be about the inventory of assets and income. The third part is going to be about the transfer vehicle. The fourth part, assets that would need to be transferred to that transfer vehicle. Part 5 is about maintaining your plan for Medicaid eligibility. And then part 6 will be the actual Medicaid application and becoming qualified for Medicaid. All right, so first we'll go into the big picture, and I want to just lay out some stuff, make sure we're on the same page. Feel free to comment below with thoughts that are going through your mind. But quite frankly, the big picture is that very few people, maybe no one, but I'll say very few people want to live in a nursing home. Most people prefer to stay in their home, get their care from family, or even hire care to come into the home. So nobody that I've had a few people over the years say it would be okay if I went into a nursing home. That's kind of what I expect, and I'm good with it. But most people, they don't want to. But the reality is, nursing homes are a way of life. I don't know about where you are, but where I am, they're kind of popping up all over the place, and they seem to be all full or close to full. So it's a way of life. Some people just get to a condition with, obviously people living longer. Some people get in a condition where, they can't be cared for adequately at home by family members, and so that 24-hour skilled care that they would get or hope to get in a nursing home is just a way of life and a necessity. But nursing homes are very, very expensive, and the cost is rising, every year. So, maybe on the low end, depending upon where you live, maybe rural areas, maybe it's about $70,000 a year to reside in a nursing home, on up to maybe $150,000 a year. I don't know what the nursing home cost is per month or per year in your area. What I would suggest, if you're really curious about it, is contact some of your local nursing homes and find out what that expense is. And then, boy, do me a favor by reporting that in the comments below, where it is, what that monthly or annual cost might be. That's going to help everybody who tunes into these videos. But if there's an issue that kind of smacks the middle class in the face from a financial standpoint, it's this nursing home issue. Because the way I see it, there's the poor, there's the middle class, and there's the wealthy. So when we talk about long-term care, well, the poor, our system is set up, they don't need to do anything. They're going to get their care provided for. They will qualify for long-term care Medicaid, and when they go into a facility, they're covered, they're poor, and the system is set up to cover them. The wealthy, on the other hand, if they got to stroke a check every month for 10 grand, they have significant resources. They have income, they have monthly income, they have annual income, they have investments that kick off income. The wealthy typically have large, retirement account balances, $10,000 a month or so to a facility for that care, not going to put a dent in the wealthy people's portfolio. But the middle class, now that's the ones that get slammed as a result of any kind of long-term care stay. Oh, by the way, sometimes people tell me I'm not real worried about it because the average nursing home stay is only about 2 years. I forgot to look it up before I did this video, but I think it is somewhere around 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. So I just know from my own family's personal experience, my grandmother, she was in the nursing home in a little town called DuPont, Louisiana for 20 years from age 80 to 100. My wife's grandmother, who passed away about 4 years ago, she was in the nursing home for 10 years. I guess they beat the odds. But if the average is 2.5 years, that means half of the people who went in a nursing home were there for more than 2.5 years. And if the annual cost is $100,000 a year, then if someone is there just for the average, that's $250,000 that they'll have to spend on their care. Now you're probably starting to see how this can smack the middle class in the face, because Medicare, which is that health insurance, and be aware that I'm distinguishing between Medicare and Medicaid. Some people just use those terms interchangeably, but they're two very different programs. Medicare, which is essentially health insurance for senior citizens, pays for their hospitalization, their lab tests. Medicare doesn't pay for that long-term skilled care in a nursing home. But Medicaid, long-term care, Medicaid does cover that expense, but you have to qualify based on your assets and income and prior history of what you've done with your assets, which is, the content of this 6-part series. But the general rule is, and I'm going to get to this more in some of the asset and income parts of our series, which are coming up, but the general rule is if a single person, and I'll do other series for married couples, but different rules apply for married couples, but if a single person, when they go into a nursing home, if they have what's called countable resources in their name, essentially anything other than their house and their car. If they have countable resources, money in the bank or other real estate or savings or checking or retirement accounts, they're not going to qualify for Medicaid to cover that expense. They're going to have to cover that expense out of their own pocket until their countable resources get down and they have less than $2,000 remaining. So if either they have countable resources when they go into a nursing home, or if they've transferred anything they own out of their name in the previous 5 years, if either one of those things happens, they're not going to qualify for Medicaid. If they're going to be in the nursing home, somebody's got to cough up that $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 monthly check. Okay, more on those asset and income rules in the future, and I'll be talking about estate recovery, where the house or the home is not a countable resource, but when you die, the state's required to pursue estate recovery rights and force the sale of the home to be reimbursed. More on that in some of the asset and income rules coming up in really the parts 2 and 3 of our 6-part series. Okay. I debated with myself whether to bring this issue up, but I'm going to bring it up. So it's kind of the ethical issue, and I hear it less and less over the years. But the ethical issue with Medicaid planning is somebody saying, I have $300,000 of life savings that I saved while I worked for 40 years, and I have my home and I have my car, and I don't know if it's right for me to take advantage of some legal strategies so that I don't have to spend my $300,000 if I go into a nursing home. It's protected for me and ultimately for my children. So I get that. But like I said, I hear it less and less. I've gotten to the point where I kind of feel like it's similar to tax planning. With our tax code, our government says, yes, you have to voluntarily report all of your income on an income tax return and pay tax to the government. However, if you take advantage of some of these strategies, give money to charity, pay interest on your home mortgage, then you don't have to pay tax, or you don't have to pay as much tax to the government. You can take advantage of what the government's letting you do to keep more of your money, protect more of what you have, less to the government. Well, our Medicaid is essentially, to me, the same thing. Our government is saying, If you need care, you have to use your own resources for your care. However, we have a set of Medicaid rules that says if you follow these rules and do this and that and this and that, then you and your family get to keep more of your money and less goes to the government and to the nursing home facility. So it's kind of similar. Medicaid planning is not burying your money in the backyard. That's Medicaid fraud. It's illegal. Please don't ask me if that's okay that you do that. So it's just doing what the government permits you to do to try to keep more of what you've worked for and saved. So I will also mention in this big picture that Medicaid it's a federal program created by Congress, but it's administered by the individual states. And so each state does, the rules from state to state may vary somewhat as long as they're complying with the federal rules. The state rules can vary. So I'm a lawyer in Louisiana, and I help our Louisiana clients kind of get and keep these things in order. But if you live in another state, what I'm saying may not be spot on with your state's particular Medicaid rules. Okay, so now, due to some of the time period, a really important issue here, due to some of the time period penalties for making transfers, which so many people do in an attempt to make themselves eligible for Medicaid, you really need to do this kind of planning and take action while you're relatively healthy. When is the right time to do it? Well, nobody knows when they're going to need long-term care. But if we did know, which we don't, then we'd take the kinds of action that I will be talking about throughout this 6-part series. We'd be taking that action at least 5 years before we needed long-term care in a nursing home facility. More on that in some of the other parts of this series, but be aware that in order to protect things, because of some of the time period penalties when people transfer assets out of their name, nobody knows when they're going to get sick, but if we did, we'd want to have this in place at least 5 years before. So who is this 6-part series for? Well, number one, it's specifically designed for single people. And when I talk about single people, I'm talking about the unmarried person. Maybe it's a person whose spouse died. Maybe it's a person who's divorced, or maybe it's a person who never got married and they just want to figure out what they need to do to protect what they have. Again, it's typically for that middle class single person for reasons I described earlier in the video. But this series is also from experience, I've seen this series is also for the children of those single individuals. Sometimes the 70-year-old single person does get proactive and does initiate a conversation with me or somebody like me about what they can do to protect what they have. But sometimes it's just the way it is. Sometimes that 45 or 50-year-old child of the 70 or 75-year-old person, that 45-year-old or 50-year-old child isn't necessarily thinking, I want to make sure I get all of mom's money one day because I'm greedy. They're not thinking that. They're typically thinking something like, well, you know what? Mom and dad worked hard for what they have. They don't realize that, they could lose everything. And I know that, now that dad died, I know that mom wouldn't want and dad wouldn't have wanted, mom to lose everything if she got sick. So the child is thinking to themselves, I'm gonna gather this information and I'm gonna have a conversation with mom about it so she can make informed decisions. And then, whatever mom wants to do is fine, but mom probably wasn't gonna be proactive to try to, take all of those active steps needed. But if it's brought to her by her child or by her children, and kind of the family makes these decisions together, then typically mom's in full support of what the family is attempting to do. All right, so real important that you subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss anything. I've already started calling for some comments in the comments below about what nursing home costs are in your area, what other experiences and thoughts you have regarding this area. This is a 6-part series, 1 part published every day for 6 days. I'm going to do it right on the mark at publish each new video at 10 a.m. Central for 6 consecutive days. I'm going to put all these videos in what's called a YouTube playlist so you can share it with other friends, colleagues, relatives that may also be interested in this information as well. Okay, so I look forward to sharing all this information, perhaps getting some comments, giving you the information that you need so that you can take action for yourself and your family and make informed decisions. We'll see you next video. Take care.